That works so well. All right, good evening. I love to see the crowd here. So let me start with walking. Hold on a second. Unmute so the Zoom can hear us too. Good. So I'm going to start by walking through our agenda, and then we will dive into the agenda and work our way through. We have many in attendance here for a couple of different reasons, and we'll hear from a lot of them. So that's great. So first things first is, if anybody here does want to do public comment for anything not on the agenda, we'll start with that. We will then move forward to our consent agenda. We do have the focus on excellence on the agenda, but we don't have a topic for today. That's going to be covered a little bit later at the next meeting. We will then move to reports, starting with our student report from Graham, and then moving through the rest of the administration and the school committee. At which point we'll move to new business. And the first item on the new business is a quick update from our Reading Education Foundation. A couple of the members from that foundation that have provided us with a grant update and all the different money that's going to the schools and for different projects around the schools that we're very grateful for. Then we move to the facility naming request on behalf of Phil Vaccaro, of which many of you are here for that, and that we're excited to hear about. At which point we'll then move to our Student Resource Officer update, which is an annual requirement, and we love to hear from them. And I'm not sure if Cooper and Rusty are here or not, but if they are, they're around. Good. So we might hear from them too. From that point, we'll move on to a discussion on policy FF, which is the school facilities naming policy. Interestingly enough, the same that Phil Vaccaro's request is under. We have some discussion there. We then have a memo that we've drafted for our state budget-related stuff for our representatives and state senators to advocate for a little bit more money from the METCO funding side of things, as it's been level funded last year and it's scheduled to be level funded next year as well, which is in essence a funding cut for us. We then have a discussion with regards to the use of the Reading Rocket logo on a new bobblehead doll to support the new Hal Croft movie that's coming out that we'll have on as a school committee. We'll move on to the Q3 financial update, and there will be a vote to do some transfers for cost centers. We then have a minor calendar update for the high school for next year with regards to the last minutes of school, 305 and 105 instead of 302 and 102, as a result of the high school update that's happened, and we will conclude with a discussion on school choice. So we've got a packed agenda, but we'll move pretty quickly through it. So with that said, does anybody here have a public comment for anything that is not on the agenda? I didn't call it. You're right. Well, I guess I did call to order by doing the okay. That was my call to order, so we're good. So no public comment, so then we'll move forward with the rest, and we'll start with the consent agenda. So, Erin.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Seconded by Sean. Any further comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? And it passes. Okay, so we'll move forward to reports. And Graham, get us started.
All right. To start off, Mother's Day is right around the corner, so happy Mother's Day to everyone, all the mothers out there from the school committee. As of the last month, the RMHS Jazz Band has performed at Hatchet Shell on the Boston Esplanade last weekend as part of the MAJ Gold Media Showcase. And congrats on their jazz band and to Mr. Mulligan, the band director. The drama club just finished their showing of The 12th Night last weekend as well, and had an amazing packed audience. We are closing in on to the second week of the AP exams, with a majority of the AP exams already being concluded. I know that I am very grateful that my AP chem exam is done. And all upcoming seniors are posting their final destinations onto onto an Instagram page, and it's a nice thing to see. So everyone's all the seniors are kind of knowing where they're going, especially since their last school day is May 17th. So it's coming around the corner. Speaking of seniors as well, the seniors are wrapping up their senior internships and have their final presentations due tomorrow night. Science MCAS are coming out for freshmen on June 4th and 5th. I don't think some of them are studying, but I know a couple that are. And then there's a kite festival at Franklin Park Zoo sponsored by the MECO program on May. And last but not least, the RMHS Unified Basketball team celebrated their senior night last week and did so in front of an amazing crowd. I know for a fact that I was there, and so was the entire track and lacrosse team. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Graham? All right, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege to embarrass Graham for a little bit here. He just made an announcement to a few of us in the back. I'm going to make it a little bit more public, which he sort of approved, so I'm okay with that. Graham has decided to go to WPI next year, which is great, but even better is he's going for free. He was awarded the President's National Army Scholarship that covers all 4 years. So congratulations, Graham. You're an awesome job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on. Dr. Pinto.
Good evening. Quick report for you this evening. So I was appointed to the WISE Advisory Board recently, and they held a fundraiser on May the 1st, which I attended. It was at Austin Prep with a derby theme, and the idea was to fundraise to send our kids to camps over the summer. So it was great to get out in the community and meet a good number of our constituents there who are all interested in what's happening with the schools. I wanted to thank the Reading Education Foundation for approving a grant that I wrote, which will allow for the purchase of special containers that will be placed in our cafeterias and allow us to move forward with the composting initiative. I also attended a Rotary meeting at the invitation of President Phil Stewart, and the speaker was from the Pleasant Street Senior Center, Chris Kowaleski. And next week, our MASBO, my professional association, is having their annual conference, and Catherine Franzetti and I have been invited to sit on a panel and speak about collaboration and teamwork, the key to success. So looking forward to that. That concludes my report.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Pinto? Okay, Dr. Malczewski?
Great, just 2 updates to share. And first of all, it's nice to see so many folks here tonight. First, I would just like to thank all of those involved from our food service department. So this past week, we hosted More Than a Meal tour, which is a kind of a statewide initiative to look at model food service programs across the state. We're thrilled that we were selected, and the visit included both commissioners. So our acting commissioner, Russell Johnson, deputy commissioner, Regina Robinson, Senator Jason Lewis, and Representative Bradley Jones, and many members from like local partners and also from DESE to come and see what was happening within our food service department. It is mainly to look at the impact that having free meals for all students has been having in districts across Massachusetts since 2020. This gives me the chance to thank our food service department, who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to provide our students with high quality food offerings. I'm sure Grant could attest over the past couple of years, I think the food quality has drastically increased. Our participation rates have gone through the roof, and just a huge testament to the hard work of our food service staff. So a huge thank you to you, and it was nice to be represented in that way. And then also, speaking of recognition, our second one, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. We've celebrated a variety of appreciation weeks over the past couple of months, including Paraprofessional Appreciation Day, School Librarian Appreciation Day, Administrative Professional Day, National School Principal Day, School Lunch Hero Day, School Nurse Day. I know I've missed a few, but would just like to take a minute to thank all of the amazing educators in this district. When you talk to folks in Reading, you say, what makes the district so special? It's the connection with staff. It's the impact that staff have had or continue to have on our students. We have so many amazing educators across all of the roles in our district that I feel deeply appreciative, and I know our students, staff, and families feel really appreciative. You can thank all of the educators. You don't have to, on any time you'd like, you don't have to wait for these special weeks. But these weeks, we do have a couple of different ways you can recognize staff. In the district newsletter this week, you'll see, again, a nomination form for a Distinguished Teacher or a Distinguished Staff Member Award, which comes with a kind of a little money award as well, and recognition to thank some of the staff who are going above and beyond and represent what it means to be a Reading Public School staff member. So if you haven't nominated someone, we already have over 100 nominations. Take a minute to nominate a deserving staff member. Also in the written newsletter this week, you'll see an opportunity to just fill out a quick thank you form to someone in our community who going above and beyond. We will then read all of those, and then we'll write that email, CC you on it, so there's that recognition from us and from you. And also, I see some students out here. You can never, feel free to always just write your teacher a note, pull them aside, say thank you. Those little notes of gratitude or moments of saying thank you, we know go such a long way with our staff. So thank you for helping me to recognize all the amazing staff in our community who truly make the Reading Public School experience so special.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Milichewski? Okay, we'll move to liaison reports. Mr. Robinson.
So I drew the short straw to present the SWEC final report and recommendations and findings to the select board on Tuesday night. And I won't go through all of it, but you can all be assured that pickleball was in the discussion. So no, it was a very good process, very collaborative process, and I think the select board appreciated what we came to them with, and now it's kind of back in their court to figure out what to do down there. Also, if I can, I don't know whether anyone was going to mention, but I did want to publicly thank Dr. Pinto, Dr. Milichewski, and our chair, Mr. Wise, for what I thought was an excellent budget presentation at town meeting. And as everybody knows, that went through. But thank you. That was just a really good report, well received, and good process. So thank you.
Any questions for Chuck? Okay, I'm going to cut the formality and not say Mr. and Mrs. And Carla, what do you got?
Thank you, Tom. So I attended that More Than a Meal tour too, which was excellent. And a lot of people from DESE who were really excited. It's nice to see Reading getting so much recognition for a lot of the things that we're doing by the state, right, with our METCO program and with this. So it was great to be there. For those of you who don't know, we're building a new school.
Or renovating.
No. Well, if you were there at the meeting tonight. So we just came from a meeting at 5:30 for the Killam Building project. We just hit a huge milestone where we voted on a preliminary design program report that goes to the MSBA. It was a 250-page report, and I shouldn't even say that. It was probably about 500 pages with all the appendixes. So that was exciting. That will be submitted to the MSBA on May 20th, and then the MSBA will have a couple of months to get comments back to us, and the designer will start on the second report. So by the end of so this report includes 9 different options for Killam. So between 3-story options, 2-story options, including the entire pre-K under one roof versus just 4 classrooms of pre-K. So if you don't know about it, we have a fabulous website, killamschool.com, and it has all the information and ways that you can get involved and just learn about the project. It will be coming for a vote to the town next spring, and we are very fortunate to be enrolled in the Massachusetts School Building Authority project, where we will receive, if this gets approved and voted by the voters, we will receive tens of millions of dollars to build the school. If the vote does not pass, then we have to do something about the school on our own dime. So we really encourage people to get involved and just see what the project is all about. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Carla? Okay, John?
No report.
Aaron?
No report.
Sarah?
No report.
Okay, I have one sort of pseudo report. It's related to Select Board. I've been approached by 2 community members about parking over on Arcadia Avenue near Barrows. which is causing a bit of a problem. So I'm going to be talking to the select board about that since they're in charge of streets. And it's a potential problem for our staff and families dropping off at Barrows from a school perspective. So just FYI, we'll see what happens in there. But similar to some of the traffic studies that have happened around Killam, this particular area, Arcadia, a lot of this Austin Prep students are parking over there and causing a bit of a traffic challenge in that area that needs to be looked at and addressed. So I'm going to bring that up to the select board and see what their role and responsibility around streets and traffic. So FYI. Okay. All right, so let's move forward to the new business, and let's start with our quick update from our Reading Education Foundation members, and it's a grant update. We have already accepted the grant a while ago, and this is the allocation of the money. And ladies, please jump this way so we can hear you and see you on the camera as well. And gentlemen, yes, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo. Yeah,
Laura,
it's a hot.
you're talking to both of these microphones.
Oh, sure.
You can bring it with you.
I'll stand here. Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you for inviting us. I am Laura O'Neill. I am the president of the Reading Education Foundation. I'm joined here with Debbie Hattery, who was the chair of our grants, and Nail Taylor, who is also on our grant committee. And I just want to mention the other members of REF because we are an 11-person board. We raise $50,000 a year. We do it with one fundraiser, the Festival of Trees, and we thank the community for all their assistance with that, all the volunteers, all the students. And if you haven't been to the festival, you're missing out because, Graham, I think you've been a volunteer. It's a great opportunity. The younger students get to see the older students. Kids come up through the program. The community shows their creativity, the schools perform, we have adult performance groups. It is an essential community act, and above all else, it helps us fund these grants from the teachers. We are running out of board members, so we are actively seeking volunteers. You do not have to have a child in the school system. You can have young children, children who have graduated, never have a child in school. It's a great way to be part of the Reading community. It's a fun organization. You get to give away money. And that's why I'm here tonight. I mean, there's nothing more fun than making a check for $34,000 and turning it over. So. I need to thank my board, the rest of the board, Laura Fusco, Krista Macari, Megan Fidlicari, Teresa Arendt, Alicia Zessis, Ann Cruikshank, Rebecca Schramm, Andrea Nelson, and Naomi Muse. So thanks to our board. Thank you to everyone for all their support. We approved 15 grants in addition to the composting grant that was submitted to this committee. Everything was approved, and here are the funds for approval. We also did this year, based upon feedback from both the school and teachers, we did 6 immediate grants that were part of a revolving fund, and those grants were given to the teachers for this year. And they were able to use the funds immediately and help in the classroom. The large grant that we are presenting will be for projects for next year, starting in September. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So as is customary, we need to do a picture. So committee members hop out, let's do a quick picture, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Over there.
Okay.
We got lots of pictures, lots of achievements.
There's one.
I have some more to do.
And while you're walking out, I'd just like to thank REF for the continued partnership too. And I think if you've looked at the various grants that they've supported over the years, I think you can see the various ways that they'll impact the student experience. So I think thank you for all your work and fundraising time and efforts. It truly makes an impact on our students, and I know our staff are deeply appreciative. So thank you for the continued support.
Okay, so now we move on to the item on the agenda that many of you are here for. Not all of you, but many of you are. And that is the facility naming request on behalf of Phil Vaccaro. And before I ask Mr. Mascarello and the rest of the people that are speaking to come forward, I just wanted to kind of walk through the procedure a little bit so people know what to expect. First of all, as you know, a request was sent in to name a part of the athletic facilities after Phil. And in doing so, it executed the first step of policy FF, which is the submission of the request. You then sent multiple emails in support of that, and Dr. Milczewski and I have seen those, and we are very appreciative of them. We will be responding to them, probably with some assistance, to ask for your approval to distribute them to what would eventually be the advisory committee and make them a public record, essentially. They are already a public record because they were sent to our accounts, but we don't distribute out as a document to people unless we get that approval. So that will be part of that process. Tonight, you are here through the policy because you have 10 minutes to present your case, for lack of a better way to put it. What you will not hear from the committee is any sort of discussion on your case, because our policy prohibits it. But we can ask clarifying questions as a result of what you submit and what you ask of us. We will follow up after this meeting, and the policy says at a subsequent meeting, and I think we talked with Pete about this. We're going to have that subsequent meeting on June 6th, and there's a reason for that as well. There's another request in the queue to name another field that we're going to hear about at our next meeting. So because of that fact, my suggestion for our committee is that we join those two requests into one advisory committee that looks at both requests together. So that they can move together as a party and not conflict with each other on the outcome at the backside, is what my reasoning for that is. So in addition to that, just as a formality note for the committee, the policy does request that we put public notice out on this, and we have done that. However, we did it a little bit late. We did it early enough for the next meeting, the 23rd, but too late for today. So I'm asking for grace from the rest of the committee from that fact, because of the fact we already have another meeting coming up that is also doing a naming request. And because we have these wonderful people here today to present on this item, we felt like it was necessary to separate the presentations, but also wanted to make sure that we could move this one forward appropriately. So with that said, any objections, any questions from the committee? No? Okay. So Pete, we're going to ask you and whoever the other four speakers are to come forward over here. Let's grab the mic off the stand there as well. And sit close to Chuck so the camera can get you, so that whenever the Zoom people can see who is speaking and whatnot. And I'm going to ask as well that the people that speak, just tell us your name. You know, obviously you're here to advocate on behalf of Phil, but tell us your name and if you want to, any other relation you have in regard to that. All right, so I guess we don't need that mic because Carla brought hers over.
I know we have 10 minutes, so we'll speak quickly. So thank you. My name is Pete Mascarello, retired 35-year department head of math and RMHS head baseball coach, as well as a lifelong Reading resident. So thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal to name the gymnasium within the Walter E. Hawks Fieldhouse in honor of Phil Vaccaro. Thank you for everyone who's here tonight to support the proposal. And thank you to the students, student athletes, coaches, teachers, administrators, and parents who have written over 60 letters to advocate for Phil. Special thanks to Dr. Milczewski and Mr. Wise for your guidance through this process, and for not only reading the 60+ letters, but by responding personally to each of them. Now, Phil's most deserving of this honor because of his unique 30-year contributions to our school and community. He's been an RMHS teacher, coach, athletic director, while he and his wife, Dottie, have been longtime Reading residents, parents, and business owners in town. Mr. V began his career as an outstanding math teacher and superb soccer coach. He became athletic director in 1994 and immediately became not just a supervisor, but a mentor to his coaches. Phil taught his coaches to focus on building positive relationships, promoting sportsmanship, and developing character. You see, Mr. V's vision for athletics was to use it as a vehicle to help student athletes learn, grow, and become better people. Now, Phil has received dozens of awards. He was named Massachusetts and Regional Athletic Director of the Year. He's earned accolades from the MIAA for his great work with sportsmanship across the state. He's inducted into the Mass Soccer Coaches Hall of Fame and our own RMHS Athletic Hall of Fame, which, by the way, he founded. Now, I've had the opportunity to read all the letters, and what struck me time and time again was the deep respect, admiration, and affection everyone has for Phil. People were eager to express their gratitude for how Phil has impacted their lives, and then wanted you all to know that. Phil Vaccaro has dedicated 30 years to helping young people in Reading, and now deserves to have his name and legacy honored and remembered by current and future generations. So thank you for consideration. Allow me to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Joe Finnegan.
Thank you, sir. First, I'd just like to thank Peter Mascarello for hiring me as a math teacher back in 1986. He shaped my life as an educator, a parent, and as a husband, so I want to thank him very much for that. It was extraordinary. The other piece is I'd like to thank the committee for allowing us to come forward, and under Dr. Milichevsky, the continued good work you do in making us all proud of the Reading Public Schools. So naming a facility after somebody is a big event, okay? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. But I think that with the group that we have here and the group that we have in the audience, and I think the supporting letters that you have shows the magnitude of the impact that Phil has had on, whether it's former students, the families, myself as a principal, the faculty members, and the community at large. There's another piece beyond Reading that the impact that Phil has had in athletics, interscholastic athletics within the state. And I can tell you, as being a principal not only in Reading, but in another community, the impact that a number of times that people have come to me and spoke about the admiration of what Phil got started here in Reading is maintained by Mr. Zaire, and the pride and the envy in certain ways that many communities look at Reading. So I'm a former principal at Reading Memorial High School. I'm also a Reading resident, okay? I was the third principal that Phil worked with. He worked first, was appointed by Rena Merkin, worked with Frank Orlando, and then came myself. When I undertook the job, it was a very exciting time for us here at RMHS because it was the building project, and it gave us an opportunity for all of us as a community to reinvent and redefine the school. And we did that all different ways, whether it was in the other student activities, the drama, music, okay, other student activities, most importantly, the academics, but also the athletics. In every area, Phil was a strong, strong advocate, okay, for every facet of RMHS. That doesn't happen in many communities, and it rarely happens at all. Each day as a principal, I knew that I could depend upon Phil's high level of character, standards, creativity, decision-making, judgment, and unwavering values as we dealt with all issues. RMHS enjoyed a formidable reputation in the community and beyond. Phil provided opportunities for all students, believing that an engaged student body directly impacts the tenor, tone, and academic success of the school. A favorite quote I have from Longfellow is that the thoughts of youth are long, long thoughts. We think about parents giving us their sons and daughters as ninth graders and their work in progress as we move them through the high school. But really the impact that you see, or the students see, is when they look back, okay? Most often at school committee meetings, we're looking future. Tonight, talking about Phil's impact, we get a chance to look back. And I think I'd offer everybody in the audience here as the impact that Phil has on all of us, okay? With that, I'd like to hand it over to Ann DeSico, and I'm always in the mood for accolades. Ann and Mike were great parents with 3 RMH graduates as sons.
Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate it.
You want to sit in?
I do. Thank you. You guys have a couple of tough acts to follow. Yeah, my name is Ann DeSico. I don't have any of those credentials. I am a Reading parent. My husband and I first met Phil when our 3 sons were involved in sports at Reading High School. And Phil was the athletic director at the time. We were both volunteers, we helped with various sports and got to know Phil on a more personal level, and we struck up a friendship. And during a few of those years when the school renovations were going on that Joe was talking about, Phil had an idea to uplift and encourage the students with inspirational quotes in the hopes of motivating them, as well as prepare them for a bright future beyond high school. He also wanted to include the Middlesex League mission statement, which stresses achieving the highest degree of sportsmanship, fair play, and mutual respect. I own a small business, a small sign business, and Phil asked if I would help him implement his ideas. So we worked together to choose the quotes and layouts and fill the Fieldhouse foyer so that anyone who happened to walk through could feel the inspiration and support that the program exemplified. It was great to help create such a meaningful space. But these weren't just words for Phil. They were the standards that he lived by and exhibited in his own life. He worked tirelessly at building the athletic program here, but particularly the character of the program. His main objective was always teaching the kids sportsmanship, hard work, and fairness on and off the field, and he was available 24/7 to parents and students. Outside of school, Phil is a genuine and generous man who is always willing to help anyone in need. I have witnessed this firsthand many times, and while my 2 minutes here won't allow me to elaborate, I can assure you our community has benefited greatly from his help and generosity. In all aspects of his life, Phil walks the walk. I personally feel that the gym is a perfect fit for a named venue for him because his goal was to help every child that came through these halls, and gym class is something that every child participates in and benefits from in a positive and healthy environment. He truly deserves this honor, and I hope you'll make it happen. Thank you. And this is Sue Burke? Sharon, sorry.
Should we switch? Yeah, go right ahead. Okay. Hi, my name is Sharon Burke. I am the retired librarian from the high school, and I was also the GSA advisor. I'm here to talk about how Phil had the interests of all students in mind. He had the well-being of all students, not just athletes, not just boys. I learned this when I took over the advisorship of the Gay Straight Alliance, which is now called the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. First thing he did was introduce me to Jeff Perotti. Jeff wrote a book called When the Drama Club is Not Enough, and he also founded the Massachusetts Safe Schools Initiative. You can find a link to that on DESE if you want to. Statistics show, and you probably know this, that kids who identify on the LGBTQ spectrum have higher rates of self-destructive and harmful behaviors. But statistics also show that when schools are safe for gay kids, they tend to be safe for all kids. I thought to myself, wow, our AD is connected to the person in Massachusetts who is in charge of LGBTQ health. Sorry, I get mixed up with the acronyms now and then. There were so many times that when I taught here in Reading that I thought I had died and gone to heaven, but that was one of them. I remember very clearly thinking, this place is different. Needless to say, Phil was a huge supporter of GSA, and he is one of the reasons our kids felt supported at school. At the beginning of every school year, he'd come to a meeting, introduce himself, and those kids knew that he had their backs. He told them, you come to me if you have any problems. He provided transportation to our regional meetings, and he helped us host workshops on how we as a school should be supporting students and parents as they deal with the tricky issues of high school, especially when you're identifying as LGBTQ. He encouraged his coaches to attend PD on how to create safe spaces in our classrooms and on our teams. And importantly, Phil did not tolerate anti-gay expression, not from his coaches or his athletes. I wish I could say that that is the norm in other places, but even today it is not. Phil was ahead of his time. That was at least 22 years ago. In addition, Phil Vaccaro unequivocally supported female athletes at RMHS. At his urging, I was able to bring girls to the Massachusetts Conference for Women, which gave our girls the opportunity to meet with professionals in high tech, biotech, engineering, etc. This was at his urging and his sponsorship. Phil Vaccaro is one of the reasons that I was so proud to teach in Reading. As the timer and scorekeeper for football and basketball, I went to many, many games. I saw firsthand the culture of sportsmanship, integrity, and professionalism in which the games were conducted, what joy I got from watching our athletes compete, and what pride I took in how our students behaved in the stands. I think this is due to Phil's influence. I believe this town would be very proud to have a facility named after Mr. Phil Vaccaro. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Corey Welford. I'm a 1991 graduate of Reading High School, and Mr. Vaccaro was my soccer coach for 3 years. He was also my math teacher, but please don't hold him accountable for my math skills because no one can save those. I was lucky to have many great teachers and coaches in my life, many of them from Reading, but none had a bigger influence on me than Phil Vaccaro. I know I'm not alone in that. You see many of his former players who are joining us today because of that, and many more that wish they could be here. The word that comes up every time I think of Mr. V is family. Again, you see a lot of that family here today. Mr. V created an environment where his players and students felt like a family and like we were part of his. We knew his kids, we knew Mrs. V sitting in the front row, we knew his parents. To this day, 30 years later, Mr. V is still calling me and checking in on me to make sure I'm doing okay. Mr. Vaccaro was fair, funny, and relentlessly positive as a coach. I know that I always wanted to do well because I cared about winning, but I also wanted to do well for him. He held his players to high standards in how we treated each other, our opponents, and the referees. And we were all proud to put on a Reading uniform because we always knew we played the right way. Mr. Vaccaro created an environment where his former players were always coming back to support the current teams. When you were part of Reading soccer, you knew you were part of something bigger than yourself, and that was because of Mr. Vaccaro. Beyond who he is as a person, I don't want it to be lost what a great coach he was. He was an excellent teacher of the game. Reading soccer was never a particularly strong program before he took over, and I remember watching his teams when I was in middle school and how exciting it was to see the team start to win. It made me an entire generation of players want to be part of Reading soccer, and I believe that program still benefits today from the foundation that he laid. As a coach, a teacher, and an AD, Mr. V is uniquely responsible for the successes of the Reading athletic program. He's left a legacy of countless students who he mentored as athletes and as people, and I'm lucky enough to say that he's still a mentor to me 30 years later. Naming a sports venue after Phil Vaccaro would be a fitting tribute to a person who has meant so much to so many and who has given so much to the school and the Reading community. We all could be incredibly proud every time we walk into a Reading athletic event and see the Vaccaro name. And on behalf of the former players, students, and parents that were lucky enough to have him as a coach and a mentor, we respectfully ask that you make that wish a reality. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for your words. I think we were very appreciative of them. Now is the time where the committee can ask questions, but not necessarily debate or deliberate. So it makes it very interesting. So does anybody on the committee have any questions they would like to ask now? Carla?
Is he here?
No.
I just figured I'd ask.
No, he's not here. Get your mic back, yeah. Sean, do you have a question?
I do. So the nomination, I think I heard mention, thank you, is the nomination for the sort of the interior portion of the field house specifically? Is it for an athletic venue? It's for the gymnasium specifically? Okay.
Yes, we deliberated about that a little bit, and we were aware of the other proposal that you talked about. And Phil being Phil, he didn't want to get in the way of that. Talking about turf too.
Yeah.
Phil's family felt strongly that the gymnasium is appropriate. Every college field house has the gym named and the field house names. This is not unique. But the gymnasium is really the center of Phil's activities. That's where he lived. That's where he taught kids. That's where he taught us coaches. So that's why we think that's appropriate, the gymnasium within Walter E. Hawks.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, so, once again, I mean, just so everybody knows, it's all online. You can read it yourself if you want to. Policy FF has, basically 5 characteristics the subcommittee is supposed to analyze on. And that's in section B. It's superior levels of performance in strengthening and supporting the public schools, effective citizenship, community service, excellent character and general reputation, and high standards of ethics. If I can speak today, it would be beneficial. So those 5 things are going to be what the advisory committee will look at once we vote and discuss to form it. The advisory committee itself, as I mentioned, we'll have that discussion on our June 6th meeting, where I will recommend to the committee, and the committee will either accept or decline, or change, as the case may be, that we form a athletic facility advisory committee covering both this request and the one that's coming forward next week for Turf 2 on behalf of Coach Hardy. So that's what we'll hear next week. The advisory committee will be formed and will likely hold at least 3 meetings over the summer, maybe into early fall, one of which will be its own formation and setting up who the chair is and all that kind of fun stuff. The second one will be a public forum where it officially has to be publicized in the newspaper and whatnot. There's a public forum about a naming, or 2 as the case may be, and have people come to speak. That will be another opportunity for this group to get together and advocate on behalf of what you're asking for. And then the final meeting they would have would be their deliberation on what they've heard and the recommendation that they'll bring back to the overall school committee. So that's the general process. Step 8 in section C of that policy calls for 1 member of the school committee to be on that, the building principal to be on that, a member of the Board of Selectmen to be on that, a local business leader, 1 student representative, and the historical commission member to be on that. So it'll be a pretty interesting subcommittee. Technically, it'll be an advisory committee for us. So that's the process and the next steps. And with that said, thank you so much for your time and for your recommendation. Again, like you said, 60 plus letters were sent. We will be sending out requests for everybody who sent a request to make sure we can include that in the packet for the advisory committee as well. And I see nods already, but we'll get your official recommendation or agreement via email as well. So thank you so much, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, so moving back to our agenda, we now have our annual Student Resource Officer update. And Officer Lewis, Officer Vatcher.
Lieutenant Abadi is here as well.
Lieutenant Abadi is here as well, yep. Come on up to the table. Let's go ahead and give a mic over there as well if we can.
You guys have 2.
And we do. This one, we'll take that one. We'll move this one in the middle. Aaron's like, I don't want to.
We know you're loud enough.
Sarah, did you bring pizza?
I think I'm loud enough for sure.
Not on the end anymore, Sean.
We got it over here, we're good.
I'll take it over there. Seems like everything's going to be
Hey, dogs. I'm going to put it on the outside. Put it on the outside.
There's been a fox running back and forth in the corner of Ash Hill and Walnut, and it darted right this morning, and I was like, I almost lost my life literally because there were so many.
All set? Thank you. Set? Good evening. I'm Officer Brian Lewis from the Reading Police Department. I'm the School Resource Officer for the high school. Alongside me is Officer Matt Vatcher, who's the School Resource Officer for the elementary and middle schools. Also in attendance is Lieutenant Detective
Brian,
Richard Abadi.
hold on a second. Yeah. Mr. Zaya, can you help him move out of the library? They're happy to stay, but if they're going to stay, we can't have them talking. All right. Officer Lewis, sorry about that. Please proceed.
Okay, no problem. I'm Officer Brian Lewis from the Reading Police Department. I am the school resource officer at the Reading Memorial High School, and I'm Cooper's partner. Alongside me is Officer Matt Vatcher. He is the SRO for the elementary and middle schools, and his partner Rusty is here also. And last but not least in attendance is Lieutenant Detective Richard Abadi from the Reading Police Department, who is also our supervisor. So we're just going to touch upon some updates for what we're doing in the schools and some highlights. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end. Number one, the first thing we put on our update is that we continue to maintain an excellent partnership between the Reading Public Schools and the Reading Police Department. This is the bread and butter of a successful SRO program. Without a strong relationship, we're not going to be able to support young people with their needs, and if we don't know what the left hand's doing, the right hand's not going to know what's going on either. So Officer Vatcher and I attend many trainings with SROs from all over the state. We were just at one the last 2 days with over 500 SROs, and we hear stories about other schools and their police departments, and they don't have a good relationship, Cooper, and how difficult it is for them to help young people who are in need. So we're very grateful for that relationship, and we continue to work on building it, and hope it continues to be as good as it has been the past few years. Another important update is Officer Vatcher and I have both received recertification as SROs, which is required from the state and the Post Commission. Another important thing that was accomplished this fall was Cooper and Rusty were certified through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs and are now officially classified as therapy dogs, so that was exciting. We've assisted the schools in running ALICE drills at the high school and middle schools, and Officer Vatcher has also led professional development classes with the elementary school teachers and faculty.
We hope to do that as well in more of a thorough nature, maybe at the beginning of the school year next year, when we can include all the paraprofessionals as well, because I know they're not required to be at staff meetings, and a lot of them missed out on some good training, which they are in the school at times where they should know what to do in case of emergency. Let's see, we also Brian did a lot of legwork on getting a lot of the school administrators and staff trained on CSTAG, which is the Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines, which administrators and counselors, they use as a guideline for any school threat or any person-to-person threat that comes up in the school. It's kind of like the go-to assessment for threats in schools. We continue to work closely with the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support to provide resources for students and families. The coalition does so much good work with the schools and for the kids in the schools for recovery and substance abuse and education against substance use. Me and Brian continue to be a part of the district crisis team, which is made up of administrators and staff from the district, and the Reading High Core Crisis Team, again made up of staff and counselors that work as a group to address safety and any problems that arise in the schools. And we're in the process of working with Dr. Stiles and the district team to overhaul the district emergency protocols. So we're going line by line, section by section, and revamping to see what's necessary, to see what's not necessary, can be taken out. So far it's going pretty smooth. It's a long process, it's a big book, but we're making some headway. It's funny that Cooper has been quiet all night until it's his turn to go.
It's his turn, yeah.
What else, Brian?
Recently, we attended free training hosted by the FBI Boston about best practices on responding to bomb threats and swatting calls, which is a growing trend throughout the country and here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This training was also made available free to district leadership if they chose to participate. Officer Vatcher hosted a lunch meeting with District Attorney Marion Ryan with 8th grade students on National No One Eats Alone Day, which is fun to see the kids asking her all sorts of questions. We've continued to work with the Reading Coalition to support youth mental health first aid in junior health classes at the high school. And starting tomorrow, we start teaching Choose to Refuse, which is the opioid prevention education here in health classes.
This list kind of goes in order with the whole school year. Second half of the school year kind of ramps up with Read Across America, and throughout the year I've been trying to teach internet safety and social responsibility to the fifth graders, the incoming sixth graders, because in middle school I see the major problems arise on social media and messaging and group texts and stuff like that. So just trying to teach them safety, responsibility, so they don't get themselves in trouble and hurt others. And so I'm continuing to work on that. Hopefully I get to other schools. If not, I'm going to hit it early next year. Like I said, Read Across America Week, a lot of guest reading, did some night events for Barris and Birch Meadow. It's PTO raffle season, so we've been doing a lot of rides to school and lunch and breakfast with the kids, and then me and Brian and other members of the police department have been serving lunches at all the schools. We have Barros next week on Thursday. And something new this year that we've done is I've been doing a couple health classes with the Reading Coalition at Coolidge for their projects on substance use and abuse. It's kind of a presentation and kind of a Q&A on, information gathering for them for their project. And I think finally, Youth Academy. Yeah, we have been working with our community service officer to come up with the first Reading Police Youth Academy this summer. It's for incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. It's going to be the last week of July, and it's going to cover pretty much everything we do as a police department, except the really dangerous stuff that we can't let them do. We started out with 25 spots and it filled up really quickly, so who knows what's in store for next year.
Yep. And finally, I think, which I neglected to put on there, but we're going to go support our biggest fans, which is the Unified Sports teams at the Unified Sports extravaganza at the high school on May 29th, so we're excited to be there to support some of our biggest fans. And that's it. Any questions?
Great, thank you both. Any questions from anyone on the committee? Erin?
So first off, thank you for everything that you do. I feel like we have sort of the gold standard in Reading of school resource officers, so I'm glad we get this opportunity to highlight all that you do, because I don't think everyone is always aware of what a big impact you have. I'm curious what, if any, trends you're seeing with substance abuse in the schools right now, to the extent that you can talk about it.
I would say it's nothing out of the usual. I think for a while there, about 4 years ago, vaping was really very popular and happening a lot in our schools, and it's still happening, but I think the education and the prevention that we're trying to teach young people about, and limiting supplies here in the Commonwealth, thank you, Cooper, you can't just go into a convenience store and buy that stuff anymore. You can't buy flavored nicotine products. So I think that's kind of put a squash on it. But I think just like when we were in high school, there's always going to be some constant issues that are always going to come up. But we do our best to make sure that we're educating the young people. And if they do have an issue, that we get them support and also educate them on the harms and potential dangers of that substance. It's very bad, Cooper, I know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Sean?
Just a comment, I love PTO raffle season because I love seeing all the pictures on social media. I think you're probably keeping Dunkin' Donuts in business with the Munchkins. So thank you for that. I know the kids love it.
No problem.
Dr. Milczewski.
I've said it every year, and every time I have the chance, I'll do it too. Just really, really appreciative of both kind of everyone here, Rusty, Cooper, Officer Lewis, Officer Vatcher, Lieutenant Body here as well, but Chief Clark, Deputy Chief Amendola too. Truly feel like it's a partnership, and I think a couple things that when I stick out to me about Brian and Matt, who I think are the best, is first their visibility. If you go anywhere in the community, they're there. There's days where I'll go to 3 schools and I'll see Matt and Brian across all 3 schools moving around. one, it's just they're everywhere and they're constantly present in our buildings. Second thing is their level of engagement. I think that they act also as a support, a resource, a thought partner, a mentor for all of our students. You'll walk down the hallways, elementary or middle school, you'll see Officer Vatcher talking to students, whether the student's having a difficult time or giving them some positive reinforcement or praise. Constantly walk by Officer Lewis's office, which is filled with students, mentoring and support. I just think they list some of their, kind of the responsibilities here that they may take on that apply to their role, but really the day-to-day way they engage and interact with our students, I think, is what makes such an impact. And then I am personally appreciative of just your thought partnership and support and collaboration. I know we have to work through issues from time to time, and I just always know that you're there and a great resource and support for us and our team. So we have the absolute best of the best in both of you, and I feel like we have a model partnership with the police department. So just thank you for all of your work, and that you are beloved in the communities. Number 3 and 4 behind number 1 and 2 right there in terms of power rankings. But thank you for everything you do.
Thanks, Tom. We wouldn't be in such a good position and have a good program if it wasn't for our boss. Yep. So he started it all. He was like the number 1, so that's why we're so good today.
I was going to say, so I have to speak into my phone.
Yeah. Please do.
You just said that. So it's kind of interesting that the previous agenda item was on for tonight. So okay, let's take one.
That's fine. Yep.
Speaking of being number 1, that was just about 18 years ago. And when I walked in the building tonight, I saw the faces I saw here. 18 years ago, the position didn't really exist, didn't know where it was going to go. When I came in the building, sort of didn't know what was going to happen. Joe Finnegan, Peter Mascarello, Sharon Burke, Jeff Nelson, Mr. Hart, Mr. Scarpino, that was the leadership team at the time. And they're the ones that sort of like helped me hold that position and supported me. And it was just amazing to see them here tonight. Like, there were hundreds of years of experience and dedication tonight. I'm not sure if you know all the faces, but I mean, good for Mr. Vaccaro to have such high character people here talking on his behalf. He deserves it. I never had him as a coach, but I had him as a teacher, and he told horrible jokes. People would mispronounce my name, Abate. He used to say, can't go fishing without a bait, or a sister on that. It's just incredible that was 18 years ago, and it's just a testament to the culture and the community that's built up here and the support that the Thomas have now had for each other. And it started with that group, and it's just building. I kind of brought a smile to my face, and nothing professionally, but just thought it was pretty incredible to see. And these guys are amazing, and whatever they say about me is nonsensical. It's position. The new high level, and it's incredible. Their dedication is second to none. Appreciate them so much. Thank you.
Thanks, LT.
All right, we thank you all. I think Dr. Milczewski said it all. He spoke for us. You guys you do a great job. So we can't thank you enough. All 4 of you, all 5 of you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
For what you do in the partnership there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the entire department behind you as well. Okay. Chris like, let me go.
With Rich.
Look at him go.
I think we're okay, Chuck.
You okay?
I think we're okay. We spread them out, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're good from a mic perspective. All right, so we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion on policy FF. Just to frame, I think I did it in the memo, but just to frame the conversation, I'll max it to 20 minutes. If we need a few more, fine, but I don't want to spend all night talking about it. If we need less, great. This is a follow-up from the conversation from late February. I think it was Sean who recommended we have a conversation just as a committee to kind of provide feedback to the policy committee on how we think we should address this. I also included the minutes from the conversation we had with the Student Advisory Council and SOCA for EJI, where Chuck and I were able to attend and listen and to engage in that conversation. I think we've had the conversation sort of ad hoc to a degree that Policy FF probably needs some improvement in terms of the way it's formed and structured. But I wanted to just kind of open it up now to, you guys have seen the memo, you've had a chance to read it, to get any feedback that people had so that, between Chuck, Aaron, and I, we can go back and recraft, reform, and how far we want to go as well. So anybody wants to start the conversation, I'm open. Sean, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Tom, for putting this on the agenda. I appreciate that. So just a couple, observations. Some of them were reflections on your comments or your, things that were in the minutes from the policy subcommittee meeting, which were really helpful. It was interesting to compare it to the model policy, which I don't know that I'd seen before. I think you made the comment that it's much less restrictive. It's a much shorter policy. Some of that is the inclusion of a procedure versus not. I'm actually not that troubled by the inclusion of a procedure because we're creating an advisory subcommittee in this case. So it sort of is ours to drive the procedure. So I'm not so troubled by that. I'm also not necessarily wedded personally to the idea that we just sort of emulate the MASC model policy. I think we could achieve some of the same things by just sort of slightly loosening up, kind of who would be eligible. So, somebody who's made a significant contribution to the history of Reading or to, education as a field and as a practice, would, I think, still sort of fit the same goals that I'm sort of interpreting from the original policy, while not maybe being, quite as restrictive. Just to put one, a tangible point on it, and again, I think this is something that was raised in the minutes. A lot of our buildings currently are named after folks who wouldn't be eligible under the current policy. The naming belongs to the building. So, we heard from Carla tonight that there's, 9 potential building approaches. Like, I don't know legally, technically, if it's a given that new building automatically becomes called Killam. Would we be able to name the new building Killam under the current policy? I don't know. And so I think there's a case for looking at sort of getting back to the core principles around, what we would want to sort of, how we'd want to define who's appropriate for us to name a facility after and maybe loosen the reins a little bit in that way.
Okay. Carla?
Are you hearing that there are people interested in renaming Killam?
No, not necessarily. I'm only bringing it up because if you read either our policy or the MASC policy, the name belongs to the building. We're going to have a new building, right? So do we have to go through the exercise of naming the new building, or
No,
do we
because
just move the nameplate? I don't know how that works,
We're in the
right?
MSBA process for Killam.
Well, sure, but there are other MSBA,
Subsequent after the building was built, then that discussion would happen, right? Isn't that what you're saying?
It could. I'm saying I don't see in the language in our policies around naming facilities that, and to your point, there are instances of MSBA buildings where a new structure was built on an old, on an existing footprint and had a new name at the end of it, right? So it has the name of the facility that's being considered for replacement or renovation. It doesn't necessarily mean, as I understand it, that the new building just carries the name from the old one in the case of of building something new. I'm not making a case one way or the other for whether it should be. I'm just pointing out a technical point here that I think it's actually maybe relevant to us that our current policy would preclude us from naming something after J. Warren Killam. That's all.
I think that's kind of a...
We're not discussing that as a topic. He's just raising it as a hypothetical in the current policy, not because he's suggesting it in any way, shape, or form.
Definitely
I'm
not.
going to pin
I just
that
want to make sure
conversation.
I just wanted to ask if you had heard anything like that on the horizon.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Any other feedback or thoughts on the overall policy itself? Or the feedback from the meeting that we had as a subcommittee? Aaron?
So I unfortunately missed the meeting, but I'll just say generally, I applaud the students for advocating. I'm a big fan of students bringing us their concerns and ideas. So I have no problem going back as a subcommittee and examining this more closely and having a more in-depth conversation about it. And I don't know where I stand on it beyond that, but I'm perfectly open to taking a deeper dive and considering, I do see a lot of validity to their points. So I think it's worthy of us having a conversation as a subcommittee.
Okay. Anybody else? Sarah?
I'll just echo that. I think it's worth revisiting. I think there probably is some room for improvement around language, around kind of diversity like making sure we're taking a global look across our district and how we're naming things. It's not lost on me that most of our buildings and whatnot are coming up are pretty named after white men for the most part. So there's certainly contributions that they've made. There's contributions of others, just making sure we're reflecting the contributions of the community as a whole in our school district. And then I think just the language in there around kind of sponsorship, for lack of a better way of saying it, around that we would consider kind of monetary donations and for naming rights makes it seem a little bit like maybe that language could be cleaned up a little more so we don't end up with like the Coca-Cola Performing Arts Center or something like that.
It might be good to have money from Coca-Cola.
It would be, but I'm not sure I'd be really proud to be calling our center after somebody who donated a bunch of money.
We have not been faced with that problem
We
so
have
far.
not, but I think if we're opening up the policy, it's worth cleaning up the language.
Okay. Chuck or Carla, anything else on the policy itself, or?
I just look forward to our subsequent meeting conversation. I'll be ready then.
Okay. Okay.
Can I make a comment? Bill?
Absolutely.
I do think that, right, so in the past year, or within 2 years, we're going to have potentially three major naming of three major facilities, for lack of a better word, because of contributions that have been made in town. And I don't want to lose sight of that as a Reading. There's a lot of people in Reading who've made significant contributions, and I don't want to lose sight of that piece of it for our town.
Okay.
But I do think it should go back to the policy subcommittee.
Okay. So just, I would, echo a lot of the thoughts here. I don't know that I wouldn't go as far as that was being asked for. I mean, I think there's some openness there that I think can be looked at, but I do value Reading as a community as well. And, be that as it may, I think there's a lot of really great people that have been around Reading that have delivered great things for Reading that I think we want to make sure, from my perspective, Reading is Reading. It's not somewhere in the middle of Iowa or somewhere in some other state or anything else like that. So I want to think about that and how we do that while also reflecting and figuring out how to address some of the concerns that were raised, right? So it's going to be a balancing act as we work on it. I personally think that the procedural side of the policy does need to be broken out. It can still be included in the policy packet from a guideline perspective for us, but it should be its own like FF-R or FF-P type thing that specifically talks about the process in which we go through and clarifies that because it is a little confusing. I think it's very interesting to me that at the state level there is not a renaming policy or anything else along those lines, right? So I'm not sure whether that can of worms is one I want to open necessarily, but it's something I want to think about and understand and make a conscious decision of as opposed to ignoring overall. While our policy buried and hidden in it does allow for it, it is a little obtuse in the way in which it makes it possible. So I'm not saying I'm supporting, in fact, I'm not supporting anything that's going on that might be suggesting that right now, but I think there would be potentially a case in some cases. Fortunately, Reading, we don't have that case right now in my mind, but it is something that some people are thinking about. So I just want to make sure we think about what that might look like and be conscious about it. So, okay, any other thoughts or feedback? Okay, so then we'll move on. So we move on to the school committee review, update, and vote on the METCO funding advocacy letter for the state budget. I included a draft in the packet. I have the Word version if we want to edit it and if anybody has any edits or adjustments they want to make. But before that, I just wanted to provide the committee a bit of an update. The committee I think, should have received an update this week from Senator Lewis with regards to the state budget. Hopefully you did. In there, if you dive into the details, METCO again is relatively level funded. There's like a very small increase in the plan for FY25. Because I knew this was on the topic, I wanted to see if there was any movement in that. I sent an email back to Jason and his staff, and they responded. I provided some of the stuff I provided in the packet in terms of the impact that we're seeing in that, and received feedback today that they received that feedback. They appreciate it. Many of the committee know as well, next Friday is a METCO, I think it's next Friday.
It is, yep.
Is a METCO advocacy type day with the state. But I received feedback today that Jason and one of their senator are co-sponsoring a budget increase number for the METCO line. and they would appreciate this letter to support that, right? He didn't say how much. MECO themselves are asking to go from the 29 million to 33 million to close the gap from last year's level funding and this year's level funding. My answer to them was at least get halfway. Hopefully they can at least get halfway, but we'll see what they say. So with that said, and background, if anybody has any edits or changes or suggestions for the letter, I'm happy to, entertain that now.
Just one.
Sure, fire away.
I think the letter's excellent, but it's on old letterhead that lists me as vice chair.
Thank you. That's what I get for pulling up my old letters.
No worries.
Not even cut that.
That's an excellent letter.
I thought it
Thank
was
you for
excellent as
putting
well.
it together and doing that.
All right, so
Letter
make
read.
that change.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so with that said, then let's take a motion so we can move this forward.
Motion to approve the Metco advocacy letter?
Good enough? Yep.
Second.
Seconded by Sean. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. Okay. Sean, thank you for catching that. I appreciate it.
Sign this?
It's not, I could print it out and sign it, but I think we're just going to send it as a PDF, which has all our names at the bottom of it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the next topic of conversation, this is a fun one. You all may know that there is a Hal Croft film that has been filmed. I think the filming has completed now. And as a result of that, the filmers are putting together a Hal Croft bobblehead. That bobblehead has the Reading Rocket logo on it. And so our legal counsel has suggested that we vote to allow that to happen because it will be sold and not necessarily for anything happening around the school. So, people use that logo and they sell Reading Rockets material and PTO raises funds and all that kind of fun stuff. So the question was, do we even have to approve it? Is it fair use or is it trademarked or is it copyrighted? And the answers that I found so far is it was created in 1945 on the back of a napkin on a restaurant behind Doyen's in the town of Reading by a gentleman by the name of Arthur Charles, and it has been used since then. There was a game in 1945, and it was the logo that was used that next weekend, basically, after it was created on the back of the napkin. You can thank Mr. Bill Brown for that information. I just want to make sure I got the name right as well that I heard. So
I was going to say, was it Gregory's?
it might have been. So it was Charlie Arthur. Sorry, it was Charlie Arthur that created it. Charlie Arthur's father. So if you know Charlie.
Charlie ran the school committee.
Yeah. So this might be Charlie Arthur Sr.
Sure, it's his father.
Right, his father who did it. So as far as we can tell, in research that another person who is in the field of trademarks and copyrights did for me, there is no trademark or copyright registered for it. So essentially, it's public and free use as far as we can tell. I would suggest that we approve them to use it, and if they're willing to, ask them to share in some of the profits that come from it. I don't think we can demand that they share in the profits. They offered to, but that would be my suggestion. But I'm open to the floor if anybody has any other thoughts or feedback.
And limit it to the bobbleheads.
To the bobblehead. Yep.
That's what I was
Sarah.
going to say. I think if we can just have some kind of written agreement of limited use for the trademark and that some kind of, if they are selling it for a profit, that, maybe the Reading Public Schools gets a little bit of that to fund something educational.
I think that was what their offer was essentially, so I see no issue with that from what I see in the emails or from the research I've been able to obtain. And I'll publicly thank Mr. Brown and Mary Ann Downing who did the research on the trademark for me.
So it's a tough one for me because I'm not bothered by this particular case. I donated to the Indiegogo like others probably did as well. So, I'm certainly not bothered by this particular case. Oh, Indiegogo is a fundraising platform they're using to fund the film. So, and I think that's part of how they're distributing these or something is through the Indiegogo as well. So, I don't know. I don't love the precedent of us monetizing our logo for something that, doesn't have a direct link to the schools. It's, it's one thing for PTO to use it or something along those lines. This one's, a half step removed from that. I also am curious, maybe it's something we can explore with Colby. Does it make sense for us to take the step of, I don't know if there's some, like, because we have common use of the logo, can we now, trademark it or something along those lines? So
The
that we
answer is
have-
yes.
Okay, so that's probably something that we should think about so that we have a little bit of a clearer vision on this going forward. And I'd love for us at some point to think about, do we want to build a policy around, around this? Because I don't want to be in this position where we're making a value judgment about any one case, whether it's, sort of a good way for us to be generating revenue off of the brand of the Reading Public Schools. So, I won't lose sleep over it in this case. It's Halcroft. It's a maybe a unique case, but I just think we need to sort of anticipate the slippery slope and get in front of it.
Agreed.
I agree with what you're saying. The monetizing piece of it kind of bothers me, considering we know who actually drew it, right? And now we've taken it, so to speak.
Think of it as donated.
I'd be fine either way, it just, yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
Their money for the sale of that is to go towards a movie?
Their money, I think, I don't know if you have a clear answer, Tom.
I don't have a clear answer.
I believe it's to basically fund some of what they've done. They might get some profit out of it, like you would with any movie. And so that would be what we'd kind of ask for, like 50 cents on the dollar, or 50 cents on the $5 or whatever, like 10% or something like that. I don't know what we'd ask for, but whatever they're willing to do, basically. It seemed like that was sort of the realm of what they were thinking about.
Didn't they say some people, going back to what Sean said, some people who had donated will get a bobblehead? I think it was one of the packages, like, level of donators. Yeah, I guess I feel like this is a very unique scenario, because in some ways it will shine a positive light on Reading Public Schools, on our track program.
In many ways.
We've named a whole facility after him, and they've already produced them. So so I have a little bit of like a thought already out there. But I agree. I think I think we look to work to trademark it and develop a policy, just so we don't sort of run into this kind of hole again.
Okay. Yeah, Colby didn't have any other, legal recommendation on her side, just that we should vote the use of it, basically, was what it came down to. So as long as we're okay with that, then, because it's such a unique thing, I'll form the motion and we can see if it works, right? And people can edit if necessary. So I move to approve the use of the Reading Rocket logo on the in a limited use on the Hal Croft bobblehead doll, with the intent to negotiate with, or request, I'm going to say request, not negotiate, request that a portion of the proceeds return to the schools for educational use.
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any further questions? All right, all in favor? All opposed? It passes 6-0. All right, great. Moving on. So Dr. Pinto, the Q3 financial update, potential vote on cost center transfers, which we know there will be at least one.
Yes, good evening again, thank you. So in your packet, of course, you'll find the financial overview for the school department's FY24 third quarter financial report. So that's spanning the period from July 1, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. It's the subsequent report for quarter 4 will be provided for the period ending June 30th, 2024, will be presented in September. This FY24 Q3 report is organized into the 4 sections that you've become accustomed to seeing, with the financial summary of the operating fund by cost center through Q3, then a description of the cost centers and drivers, the recommendation for Q3 budget transfers, of which there is one, and then the financial summary of special revenue funds to include grants and revolving accounts. I'll be happy to field any questions if you have.
Any questions for me on the committee?
I have a question on the athletics transfer. 41.7 thousand for ice. Is that a $42,000 delta from what we projected? Is that what that implies, or is that the figure?
That's the total number that I got from Athletics Director Tom Zaya so I believe it's increased costs, or there is an increase built into that. I don't have the delta on it.
Okay.
But those were the itemized. So it was the Burbank Ice increased cost, there was increased cost for officials, and then transportation. Last year at this time, it was transportation was also an issue.
Okay.
Any other feedback or questions? All right, Derek, I have a few for you. First, in the top table, in the FY24 projected end-of-year balances, we're projecting the technology budget to be over budget by $282,000. Yeah, we're not asking to transfer any money to cover that. Why is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. At this time, that's a placeholder for what we feel is a reasonable amount for technology refresh. So there are a number of computers, so there are close to 5,000 in the district. There are a number of them that have aged out, so they've exceeded the 5-year, what we feel is an appropriate time for replacement. So we're looking to replace those that have exceeded the 5-year life and then take a bite out of some of the other the other computers that we purchased previously that are close to 5 years in order to kind of level out the refresh cost every year.
So how much is that then expected to be? Is that the whole, is that basically $300,000, the difference between the what's left, or actually there's $195,000 left, but then all of a sudden we become $478 over. So is that almost $600,000 or $700,000 in spend?
So we felt that 300,000 was reasonable at this time. So that may change depending on how the savings adds up at the end of the year. So it's the 300,000 is actually in excess of what it would cost just to replace the 5- and 6-year-old machines. So we are trying to take a chunk out of machines that are in year 4 and year 3.
Okay. So this is forecasting it, but we haven't actually purchased it yet.
We have not.
We haven't put in, so we decided to purchase as opposed to lease?
Yes, we have decided that's been our practice. Year over year has been to purchase.
Okay, because I know it was something we were looking at, whether we thought leasing was more appropriate since we're going to have to renew so often.
Yeah. So we have discussed that with the town accountant. They put the possibility of lease. We also discussed the possibility of having that as a line item. There's already a capital line item in the budget. The question is the size of the purchase. So per individual machine is very low, so it doesn't quite meet the typical threshold for what a capital purchase would be. And then the life cycle is short. So town was not disposed to making that a capital purchase, but are open to discussing increasing our budget so it's more appropriately to account for the refresh on a yearly basis.
So fair to assume then we should expect the Q4 budget transfer potentially at a regular day?
Yes.
To right-size that account?
That's correct. And it may be, so 300,000 is what we've approximated. We're going to be presenting, so the network manager and myself are going to be presenting further numbers for Dr. Milczewski to review along with the exec team and determine what we feel is appropriate. So it could be over 300,000, the purchase that we're making.
So does that require us to go through purchasing related bidding process, or is that on an individual item only, and each individual item is less than 10,000, so we're good to go?
So there's a combination of items. We've tried to bring the price down by having a different product mix than previously, so we realized that there are different computing needs per grade level. So high school students may need something that's got more computing power than what an elementary school student might need. So we're differentiating in that way, but we're not going through a different procurement process than we've gone through previously.
Okay. Chuck?
This should not be a bid. This should be, you just go get them.
Yes, okay.
Okay. So that answers one of the other questions I had, which is in the regular day cost center section, you specifically talk about a renewal of technology devices, and I was going to say, why is that in regular day? Because it's in technology, but you're saying essentially you're forecasting the move of the money from regular day to support that. Okay. So one of the next questions I had is at the top of, well, I think it's page 4. It says a positive balance of $84,825 is projected at year end, in particular for special education. And barring new placements, the anticipated balance will be reduced by augmenting the special education reserve fund. You're not suggesting that we could only put $84,000 in the special education reserve fund there, right?
No, that's correct.
Okay, but some of that
Some
would
of
come
that
down, and then some of that from the other stuff that potentially we have from savings could go into that.
That's correct. Yeah, these amounts are variable and they're up for discussion right now. We've been compiling our list of priority purchases for the end of the year, so whatever is most important to us, and other unexpected items have come up. So we're looking to rank order them, prioritize them, and then other monies will be dedicated towards special education reserve, given that we have excess.
Okay. Keeping down that page, the next section is about the prepay, the $980,000, which I'm fully in support of, and you say details will be forthcoming. So when can we expect details, and is it possible that we might want to prepay more?
Yes.
Right? Or less, depending upon how many out of district placements we have between the different collaboratives and then the private placements.
Yeah, so there is absolutely the pause. So we built in the 980 figure right now because it's kind of in line with what we've done previously. We could absolutely pay more. We do have a monthly meeting where we discuss out-of-district placements, and what's at issue is determining which students will be aging out of the program, which students we anticipate may be returning to our program. We want to make sure that if we're going to be doing prepays, that it's going to be for students that will be remaining in that placement for the full year.
Then we have to make that payment before the end of June, right?
Yes.
So should we expect to hear more at our last June meeting then?
Yes. Perhaps in advance of that, so I can always send an update as we conclude those discussions internally.
Okay. Okay. Moving down to the grants, which I think is on page 5. I've got to say I'm surprised to see that the full Metco amount will be used, is projected to be used by the end of the year. It isn't usually the case. Usually we carry over a small amount to the next fiscal year. So is that accurate, or should we expect that 130,000 to carry over?
You can expect a portion of that to roll over, so we hadn't finalized what will be left at the end of this year. So typically what happens with the Metco grant is there is an amount that's rolled over that's kept in one line, and then there's the fresh Metco grant, which is in another line.
Right.
So we're operating on the basis of those two.
Right, because I mean, we had 131,000 that rolled over last year, right? And so is it fair to say that everything that's expended and encumbered for through Q3, is that including anything forecasted through Q4 as well?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, so then we should expect somewhere close to 130 unless there's any sort of surprise numbers that come into the Metco budget between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll be reviewing with the Metco director in the coming days.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be expected a little bit lower too. So 90K was the last one that we had looked at, like when we factored out kind of end of year costs. So
okay,
could be slightly, I would say 90 is probably the minimum of where we would be, potentially slightly higher, hopefully closer to 100.
Okay. Moving down then, and sorry I have so many questions on this one since it's been a little bit of, I think it's kind of the third one you're having fun with, so revolving accounts. I'm not following the language at the top of revolving accounts versus the offset. So in particular, the last sentence where it says this offset is taken to reduce the facilities expenses associated with these operations. These increased by 25,000 each over what was initially budgeted, restoring them to previous historical levels of 50,000. But then if you look down below, you have 75,000 and 130,000 in those two lines. So can you talk me through those two updates and how they reflect below?
I will. Thanks for the question. So what happened was we discovered with town, historically, 50,000 has been taken from each of those two lines to pay for whatever their expenses happen to be. So this was in those two lines. So for the extended day program and then for the use of school property. So typically they had taken 50,000. They had given us a bit of a break post-COVID with reduced revenues, and those have been reduced to 25,000 each. They did, however, we found out this year, have restored them to previous levels of 50,000 each. And so the 50,000 is inside that number. The numbers that you see reflected there accounts for additional expenses. So salaries or what have you.
So that is us giving 100,000 to the town instead of 50,000 to the town.
50,000 in each of those lines.
So a total of 100,000.
Yeah, a total of 100,000, that's correct.
So the difference then that we should see in these offsets, this 1651, that was my next question, the 1651 at the bottom of the offsets versus the 1551 in the top page thing is that 100,000 that's going to the town? Okay. And you know, one of my other favorite topics is full-day kindergarten and tuition tracking, so how are we doing on that, and are we collections-wise?
So do you know what, I don't have the FDK number, I believe was under 10 that we were
unpaid still
tracking for payment, yeah. I hope I'm not confused. So I know for athletics, I just signed letters. There were 9 sets of 9 letters that were sent out. I'm positive the FDK number is lower than that.
Okay, that's good.
So I can get you an exact number.
That's good.
If you like.
It helps.
Sorry.
These are
if you
people who
like,
still
I'll
owe a
provide
little
it.
bit of money or the whole fee or whatever else that maybe didn't apply for any sort of reduction or things like that, right? So it's all part of the keeping that whole model in line and forecast that we have in the model. So, Sean, did you want to ask?
I was just going to say, they must owe a bit, because I was accidentally 3 months behind and didn't get a letter, so. So it's
Thank you for letting us know.
and I'm caught up now. I did catch up. It was a little bit of a miscommunication in the home front, but yeah.
You're paying it. No, you're paying it. No, you're paying it.
Spam filter, too, FYI, the reminders sometimes get caught in email spam.
Yes.
Drama fee was a week late.
I don't. I wouldn't accept it anyway, Chuck.
Had you extra?
Mail spam. No, good blame. We have 2 school committee members fessing up to being late. We've all been late at times. It happens.
No, right now. So I'll get you an exact number.
Okay. I think it's the last question I have. I have 2 more questions. The Libby Scholarship Fund, 1.2 million, and it says that we want to basically spend that by the end of 2038. Do you know, or has Sharon been able to tell you, what that's invested in? Because if that's invested, we should be able to take it longer than 2038.
I have not been told what it's invested in.
And I think we should get some revenue as a result of it being
I
invested
just
too.
understood in an interest-bearing account, so I can certainly chase down.
Hopefully it's not the 0.01 interest bearing and it's
Yeah.
more like the 5% interest bearing account. Usually Sharon and her team are pretty aggressive about those things, so we should expect some revenue is my point, not just be flat and full withdrawal. And my last question is, one of the last things Susan was working on was the activities accounts for the high schools and the schools, and making sure there was good procedures in place and people were trained and what they were supposed to do and whatnot. With the 244,000 that's in those collective accounts, are you aware of that training? Has that continued? Have you followed through on it to make sure that everybody who's responsible for these activities accounts knows the process and procedures for what can be pulled, what can't be pulled, and how to do that?
That's an area that I'll have to follow up on. So I'm not aware if there's been continuity of that program or not, but I can certainly, now that you've raised it for me, I can certainly track that down.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from anybody else?
You asked them all.
I asked them all, all right. So we have a motion, I think, Aaron.
Yeah. Sorry, what page is that spelled out on?
It's the top of page 3. Just keep it simple and just do the 2 cost centers. Don't worry
Okay.
about breaking down the costs. Top of page 5, sorry.
Oh,
I gave you the wrong direction.
Okay. Motion to approve a budget transfer of 82,000 from the regular day cost center to district-wide athletics.
That's good enough. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Any further conversation? All in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. Thank you, Dr. Pinto.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we are now down the stretch run here, and Dr. Milczewski, the school committee vote for the FY24 or SY24-25 calendar update.
Great, this should be quick. In your packet, you'll see a memo that was sent out by Principal Jess Callanan to high school community back in the last week of April, outlining the upcoming the shifts starting on the school calendar starting in, or the school schedule starting in 24-25 school year. In addition, you'll see that therefore, given this scheduling shift, we're proposing a change in the start time, the end time of the day from 3:02 to 3:05 p.m. on regular dismissals, and then on early dismissals, 1:04 to 1:05 p.m. And we've also already worked through this and received approval from the union as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions from anybody? All right, a motion?
Motion to approve the 2024-25 calendar update for Reading Memorial High School.
Second. We'll make a small adjustment. It's a calendar update for the whole district, but the high school is the one that has the start and end time changes. So, but yes. Okay, any further conversation or questions? All in favor? All opposed? What's going on with you, Sam?
No, I had.
It was early to vote.
I was already voting.
He was voting while you were making the motion.
Okay, there you go. All right, the last item is a school choice discussion. Dr. Milczewski, you want to set the form?
Sure. So information, again, in your packet. As you know, each year, school committee has to decide whether to vote to opt out of the school choice program. As the committee knows, the last 2 years, the committee has decided not to vote to opt out. Over the past couple of years, we have enrolled students, 25 students across all of our schools, and received a total revenue of $199,831. You'll see we're handling it a little bit differently this year in terms of, in the packet, you'll see the available seats broken down by grade level across the district instead of by school. We feel like this still is in line with sort of state requirements and gives us a little bit more flexibility around having a better idea of class size as we move through the spring. You'll see there's 5 available seats at each grade level. I think the two major reasons why we think this has been a benefit to our district. One, we have a lot of staff children of staff members now enrolling in Reading Public Schools, or nieces or nephews. We feel like that's important, also as a perk for being in the district, and also as a retention for us, for staff. And also, too, we know that it comes, also school choice comes with $5,000 per student, and also reimbursement up to 100% of special education costs as well. So we've laid out that as a proposal tonight, but happy for feedback on the committee if you either opting out, or also on sort of the proposal we have for the amount of available seats.
Chuck?
How often do they discuss the 5,000? Does that ever get adjusted upward?
Great question. I haven't heard any conversation about that over the past couple of years, but that's been static for as long as I can remember.
Well, I mean, as we've seen in other things here tonight, everything's going up, so.
Yeah.
Maybe we should find out, and whether we should be writing a letter like we did for
Great point. Let me get a little context on that historically, and also just check in to see.
Yeah, that doesn't slow down me.
No, great, but it's a great point. It's a great point.
Any other feedback or questions from the committee? I have one. Considering our relatively low K numbers across the district, would we consider more school choice for K? And if not, why not?
Yeah. We're low right now, but I also feel like if you look at the numbers, we're kind of right in the class size of where we want to be for most of our schools, with the exception of Killam right now. We've already moved one of the teachers from K to 5. Still a little bit low at Killam, so that's a spot where we could absorb some of the 5. Still also at Birch is a little bit low, and there's still a potential for consolidation of those classes from 3 to 2. If you consolidated from 3 to 2, the class size are now, there's 36 students now, Birch Kindergarten, that would be 18. We also still don't know exactly for Metco placements yet where we'll be. So I guess I share that. I think we're pretty close to the margin of where we want to be. I don't think we have a ton of wiggle room outside of maybe Killam and potentially what happens with the Birch third class. So I think for that reason, we decided to be a little keep that in line with the other grade levels.
I would just add, I hear the question, Tom. I think it's a little risky to be too aggressive in kindergarten, because you've got all the oddities of families choosing private kindergarten and not being required to send your kid until they're 6 and all those sorts of things. So I think there's some risk in, trying to fill your seats at the kindergarten level. And
yeah, you could bounce backs in first grade and all that stuff. I mean, just thinking about it as you were talking about it, Dr. Milczewski, there's 8 seats at Birch, right? If we're on the 18 number at Killam, there's 12 more seats. That's 20 seats, right? The other schools are not at 22 in any of the classes.
Besides JE.
Except JE, right? So then there's probably another 8 or so across the other 2 schools. So would it be the worst thing to go to 10, and that still allows plenty of time for the METCO, and we're not going to fill it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the reality is we're not going to fill it. It's more a marketing thing than it is anything else. I totally hear the bounce back, but we don't usually have, bounce backs that are exceeding 20 kids in a year anyway, either. If you look at the historical trends, it's usually about 10 or 11, and I have the data, right? So I'm just trying to think about that. The other thing I would think about is, have we decided what we're going to do from a marketing perspective? Or do we want to market or not market this? And part of me says no, because we have the Killam conversations coming up. Part of me says yes, because this could help us fund a lot of the other things we need to do in the district. So I'm on the fence myself. I just wanted to see if you had further thought about it or had any feedback from the rest of the administration team on it.
Yep. I think two great kind of considerations. One thing I'll also add, kindergarten is a little bit tricky too, that we don't know what enrollment's going to look like throughout the summer. We there's a decent delta between where we are now, what the census says, and we still students who are sort of out there. So I think, as you know, you can do 2 lotteries, so we can also change that as we move forward too. If there's, come summertime, we think we have some space. So this is I think for this first lottery and go around. The other thing with kindergarten is tricky is that you can't double charge, so you can't charge we can't charge tuition and also receive the $5,000 for school choice. So if you run the numbers, you can kind of figure out what maybe.
Charge them tuition.
What's that?
We wouldn't charge these ones tuition.
Correct. So then it's sort of free, right? So I think that we're offering free for.
Oh, you're saying we can't have a charging policy to charge others and then not charge them to get the 5,000?
So we have to choose. Either we take the 5,000 for school choice, or we take the tuition.
From everybody
The 26,
else? Or from that
no, from them.
Oh, well, then I want the 5,000. Don't charge them.
Correct, and then they don't have to pay. Then they don't pay for kindergarten. It's better for the family, and it's better for us. Of course, that's how we figured it out too. But that's
family's
just
not paying it.
correct. So that's
exactly.
So that's another.
I'm a Reading family. I'm not thrilled that they're.
That's my
neighboring.
Yeah. So that's a point of why I don't think we really want to also expand kindergarten significantly, Joe. Marketing. I feel like we've rolled school choice out very slowly over the past couple of years. And I think that's, was the smart approach. I think if we start to open it up, the students are in the district for all the way K to 12. When we don't know what's going to be happening with spacing over, the next couple of years, especially with Killam, I think we're smart to just move slowly and open up seats little by little where we know we can absorb them. I worry if we start to market, we can really quickly fill this demand and much more, and I'm not sure that that's what we want to do strategically at this point. I think it's better for us to take the kind of marginal increase in support and revenue while we kind of continue to assess the program, and if for some reason next year we feel like the program is not working out as we would have anticipated, we can pull back in a little bit without having much of an impact. So we've thought about it, but I think at this point this is probably as far as we're comfortable going, and I also don't think we're looking to really make a big marketing campaign outside of really messaging and marketing to our teachers and staff members, and also there's a requirement of sort of what we do of placing on our website and also in one other venue as well. So
I think
Go ahead.
Anybody that was paying attention to your presentation at town meeting, that was a marketing piece. I mean, I was thinking when I was watching that, why wouldn't anyone want to come here? Go ahead. Seriously, I'm not being a wise guy.
I agree.
Is that good?
Thank you. And we have, and Olivia's keeping a list, we already have 12 families who've reached out. Some staff members, some not. So I think
Okay. Any further discussion? We don't actually have to vote on this because we're not opting out, so.
I'll just add on the kindergarten front that I'm of the opposite. Like, I think if you can have a class of like 16, that is a gift, and that is wonderful for that teacher and those students. And that it's never going to stay at 16 as they go through elementary school. So I know we say up to 22, but I'd much rather see our kindergartens at 18.
Agreed.
So I'm just wary of packing kindergarten, when we don't have to.
Very, very, very fair point. Okay. No other conversation? I think you're good to go, Dr. M.
Great. So we have the application ready. We'll post to our website tomorrow, and it'll be, application deadline will be Friday, May 31st at 3 p.m.
Great.
Okay. That was our last order of business. People's computers are already shut down. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Chuck, second by Chuck, very quickly. All in favor? All opposed? And we're adjourned.
Signatures?
Yes, we do need signatures.